welcome back to the channel, everybody. We are back previewing the 2024 election. This is our first video of this election cycle. For those of you coming back to the channel, welcome back. For those of you new to the channel, we welcome you. This channel's just going to aim to look at the election from a pure numbers standpoint and, dive into it as we approach the 2024 election, and it is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to see trends, to look at these elections from a numbers standpoint. It doesn't always need to be the stressful conversations with your family and friends. It can be an interesting process, an interesting numbers game, and that's really what I'm going to try to do with this channel as we go and look toward the 2024 election. Now, it is still early. And this video, as I said in the title, is just going to look at the 6 states that I believe, and I think many people believe, will win the election in 2024, will decide the election in 2024. Now, you'll see here in gray the 6 states right off the bat: Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Now, this is not to say that other states can't play a role, and you'll see with some of these tilt states or some of these lean states, Minnesota, for example, New Hampshire, for example, North Carolina, for example, even Texas. These are states that if polling as we get closer to 2024 shows greater shifts, well, then they're worth talking about. Then they're worth entering into this kind of conversation. But as it stands right now, we can't talk about all 50 states. And I think these 6 that I have in gray, these are the most likely as it stands right now. We're talking late October 2023. So about a year until the 2024 election is upon us. So I think these 6 states, as it stands right now, and frankly, I think we go a year from now, I think these are still the same 6 states that we're going to be talking about. Now, again, we can revise that as we move forward, and we'll do that together. But right now, I'm going to talk about these 6 states and why I believe that they will be the 6 deciding states in the 2024 election. And I want to start with Georgia. Now, Georgia and its 16 electoral college votes went to Joe Biden back in 2020, and it was held by Donald Trump in 2016. And again, this is going to assume Donald Trump is the Republican nominee while Joe Biden is the Democratic incumbent. Again, this is something that, we could always revise as we move forward, but I think this is the safest. And this is, again, before the primaries, before the conventions, before official nominations. But if we take a look here, and here are the 6 states highlighted right now, right off the top for you in yellow, but we're starting with Georgia, that went to Donald Trump in 2016 by about 5 percentage points, and then flipped to Joe Biden by about 0.2 of a percentage point in 2020. Now, take a look here. You'll see these margins compared to the polling averages. I'm going to use Real Clear Politics polling average. Basically, anytime you see a video of mine, it's going to be Real Clear Politics in terms of polling averages, unless I indicate otherwise. As far as the 2024 polling averages, well, that we're going to have to mess around with a little bit because Real Clear Politics doesn't have a consensus yet for all of the states that we're going to be talking about, but I'll try to use the best numbers I can when it comes to those polling averages. But we see back in 2016 how the polls basically showed Republicans by about 5, and that was the eventual result in 2016. 2020 showed just a toss-up there. When we talk about polls that are within 3 percentage points, maybe 2.5 percentage points, we're talking about a virtual toss-up there. The polls, you can say they get it wrong sometimes, and we'll definitely see polls and results moving forward where they were very much off. But in this case, showing Donald Trump up by a percentage point in 2020, and then it goes to Joe Biden by less than a percentage point in the 2020 results column. I mean, that's a general toss up. They were going to tell you that it could have gone one way or the other, and it did go to Joe Biden in 2020. And then in 2024, right now, we see Donald Trump polling ahead by nearly 4 points. So Georgia is definitely a state we're going to be looking at as we progress. It's not going to be a state that's going to be taken off of this column. Not before November of 2024. This is going to be a state that's firmly in the toss-up column as we approach 2024, and an important one at that. Now, this is a state that's been trending towards Democrats, polling aside, and again, we'll see polling get better as we get closer to Election Day, but Georgia is a state that Democrats are pouring resources into, will be pouring resources into, and is a state they believe can stay in Joe Biden's column come 2024. Again, 16 electoral votes, a very important state for both candidates. Moving towards Arizona here in its 11 electoral college votes, a state again that went to Donald Trump back in 2016, a state that went to Joe Biden in 2020. Now in 2016, excuse me, Donald Trump won this state by about 3.5 percentage points. It flipped by about 0.3 of a percentage point to Joe Biden in 2020. And so take a look here again at Arizona and how it compared to polls. Again, polls fairly accurate here. It showed Donald Trump up by about 4. That's about the margin he won it in 2016. Arizona, in both of these election cycles, according to RCP, we have gotten actually pretty accurate polling data. But again, I want to emphasize showing Joe Biden up by about a percentage point in 2020 polls and then seeing how close that margin was in 2020. I mean, that is as close of an election polling difference as you can get. This is basically saying it could go either way in 2020, and it did flip to Joe Biden, or tilt to Joe Biden, I should say. And then in 2024, so far, we have Donald Trump leading in the polls there by about 3. Arizona, again, another state like Georgia, which is why I kind of marry them together here off the top, a state that has been trending towards Democrats, and again, a state that the Democrats and Joe Biden will feel that they can keep in their column come 2024, and a state, again, that I just don't think we're going to take away from this gray toss-up column up until the 2024 election, frankly. Let's move up towards the Rust Belt and Wisconsin. Wisconsin is, I'll get into later where I'm tiering these states according to most important for both candidates, but in this case, Wisconsin, a very, very important state as well, and it has 10 electoral college votes. We'll look at how it swung to Donald Trump by less than a percentage point in 2016. It swung to Joe Biden by less than a percentage point in 2020. We're talking about a margin of, I believe, about 20,000 votes, which is minuscule in both elections. This is a state that could have gone to Hillary Clinton easily in 2016, but tilted to Donald Trump. Could have gone easily to Donald Trump in 2020, but tilted to Joe Biden. I mean, this is one of the most competitive states for the last 2 election cycles as we take a look here at polling data compared to the results. And I believe, again, it will be one of the closest, one of the tightest election states in the 2024 election. And here's where we see some discrepancy with polling. It shows that Wisconsin, to me, in 2016 and 2020, it was a hard state to poll. I don't want to be too hard on the pollsters. This seems like a state that was just too hard to poll. He was polling towards Hillary Clinton by about 6.5 in 2016, a state that was way closer than polls indicated, and it did tilt to Donald Trump. In 2020, it polled about the same, about 6.5 towards Joseph R. Biden, and it went to Joe Biden by less than a percentage point. But when you see a state that's polling that heavily towards one candidate, you don't expect it to go that middle of the line. And in 2020, it did. It could have very easily have gone to Donald Trump. It just tilted by about 20,000 votes to Joseph R. Biden. And then in 2024, as we see right now, the Democrats polling ahead by about a percentage point. So again, this is a state where more than polling data, we're going to be looking to see how accurate these polls can get. Can they correct what went wrong for the pollsters in 2016 and 2020? Can they figure that out? Can they have some kind of course correction? That's something I'm going to be looking for after the 2024 election, when we kind of rehash what happened in 2024, what happened in November of 2024, how accurate polls were. I think the main state we're going to be focused on there is Wisconsin. Did they get better at polling Wisconsin? But again, a state that leading into election day will not be taken off of this gray column. It is a tight state. It will be a tight state. I don't think we're looking at a state here that's going to one candidate or the other by 5 or more percentage points, despite what polls might indicate. I think this is going to be, again, a state that can tilt one way or the other. But a state definitely trending between polls a little more towards the GOP than Georgia or Arizona. And the biggest prize of all of these, both electorally and just in general, is Pennsylvania and its 19 electoral college votes. A state that went to Donald Trump in 2016 by less than a percentage point and went to Joe Biden by about a percentage point in 2020. And if we take a look here, compared to polls, again, this is polls being pretty on the nose here. It showed Hillary Clinton up by about 2 percentage points leading up to the 2016 election. And that's, again, whenever, like I said, whenever a poll's within like 2.5, 3 percentage points, we're basically saying it can flip one way or the other. And in that case, it flipped to Donald Trump. And then in 2020, again, a virtual toss-up, showing Biden up by 1.2, which is pretty spot on to the margin he won by in 2020. But again, a state that could have very easily have gone to Donald Trump and just happened to tilt to Joe Biden. It's showing about the same as we stand right now in 2024, with Donald Trump leading by about a percentage point and a half. A state that, again, can go either way. And we'll be talking about Pennsylvania about as strongly as you could talk about any state leading up to the 2024 election. It is the prize for both candidates. We're going to see candidates pouring copious amounts of resources into the state of Pennsylvania. The other two, and I'm just going to touch on them briefly, are Michigan and Nevada. I'm putting these in the toss-up column because of trends, because of polls, and because of just you put two states there that went to, Nevada is a state that's trending toward the GOP, but again, went to the Democrats in the last 2 election cycles, whereas Michigan is trending more to stay, at least in polls, to stay in the Democratic column. But again, it's a state that Donald Trump took in 2016. So we take a look at both of them, and they belong in this toss-up column, but not, we're not putting them in the same conversation as the 4. But when we're talking about states that will impact or could impact the 2024 election, there are other states, but these are the top 6. These are states that either went to Donald Trump in 2016 and then flipped, or in this case, Nevada's really the outlier that went to Joe Biden twice. Went to Democrats twice, once to Hillary Clinton, once to Joe Biden. But it's a state that, if you follow polling trends, has been trending very strong toward the GOP. And when we break down each of these states individually, which again, I really want to do and will do as we approach 2024 and November of 2024. We're going to dive into each of these 6 states individually and really take a look at why they're in this gray column and why they are so important to the 2024 election. As it stands right now, this is how I'm going to close. Here are the states that I think are most important and will be again, these 6 states will decide the 2024 election. Some will decide them a little more strongly. Pennsylvania, for example, is the state to watch. If you're watching one state, Pennsylvania is going to be the one to watch. The GOP are going to be watching Wisconsin very, very strongly. The RNC convention, the Republican National Convention, is going to be held in Wisconsin. So it just shows you how important the GOP believe Wisconsin to be. Whereas a state like Georgia is a state that the Democrats are going to be heavily looking to hold on to. I mean, that's 16 electoral college votes. And then Arizona, again, a state that just went to both Donald Trump and Joseph Biden by very small margins. So you have to be looking at the state of Arizona. So those 4 are definitely the most important, and Michigan, Nevada are, again, as we dive into these more specifically, you will see why these states are so important when it comes to getting to that 270 electoral college threshold to take the presidency in 2024. Again, as we move forward, I want to dive into each of these 6 states individually. I want these polls, as they keep pouring in, to keep telling us a story about how they think the 2024 election is going to unfold. And I hope you guys stick around and join me as we progress. Again, about a year from now, we will have the 2024 election. So these polls will only get clearer and clearer and give us more and more data that we can dissect. It's really exciting. I can't wait to keep progressing. So definitely subscribe, like the video, and keep following along.